Hi, I am Oaklee Thiele with the True Project. I'm here with DisArt to talk about their upcoming exhibition in collaboration with curators Lisa Van Aragon and Leandra Lisor. Um, if you guys don't mind, can you all please introduce yourselves, what you do, how you're connected to this exhibition?
Yeah, my name's Christopher Smith. I'm one of the executive directors of DisArt, a production company and arts and culture organization out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and happy to be here as part of that organization and also part of the curatorial work of this exhibition.
Hi, I'm Jill Vinn. I'm the other half of the executive director team for DisArt, and I'm just thrilled to be part of this team of people who are committed to amplifying the voices of disabled and Black activists and artists and community members at a time where this is long past due, but very important to be focused on right now.
Hi, I'm Lisa Van Aragon. I'm a curator and art historian, and I've been involved with curating exhibitions with DisArt and for DisArt events since 2015, since their first festival.
My name is Leandra Lisor. I'm an interdisciplinary artist based out of Jersey City, New Jersey currently. I'm very excited for the opportunity to work with DisArt, work with Lisa, as Lisa being very concerned with a lot of themes on access, and my work continuously speaking about those themes and speaking about the ways in which we can kind of reclaim and think of ways we can amplify our voices, our bodies in certain spaces. So I'm really excited to be working on this exhibition, which is kind of bringing all of those things together and looking forward to it.
Nice. Thank you so much, guys. So I guess the first question that sort of comes to mind, what prompted you to create this exhibition? Like, how did this idea sort of come about?
About the disability rights photographer Tom Olin. And Tom Olin is, the way that we describe him and just about everybody else, is he's the leading photographer of the disability civil rights movement. He's still active today. He's 70, so he turned 70 this year, but he has been one of the leading figures to articulate the disability civil rights movement through his photographs. And but he had produced a huge body of work that had not really been written about from kind of an art theory or art history perspective. I proceeded to educate myself about Tom's work, and I had the opportunity a year later to meet him at the next Society for Disability Studies conference. We talked in the meantime and found out that he actually grew up, he's a Michigander, which is where we're based. And so we had some great talks about his experiences becoming a disability rights advocate himself, and then entering the movement in the post-Vietnam era by moving to Berkeley and then learning to become a photographer and then picking up the camera in the midst of civil rights protests, disability civil rights protests. So we had a great connection, and he is, to know Tom is to love him. We created the exhibition Access is a Civil Right as a gallery show for the first DisArt Festival in 2015. You'll see vivid images in the exhibition of disabled people laying their bodies down under buses or parking their wheelchairs, in some cases, in front of buses, or filling the streets so that transportation through that area, wasn't passable. But what we see in Tom's photographs is that, of course, the movement is made up of people as diverse as any cross-section of society. So people of different races, genders, ages, and very different disabilities, including able-bodied allies. But to see so many different bodies in one sort of photographic frame highlights the appearance of difference. Then you suddenly have this confrontation between the disabled presence and public space. the aesthetic of his photographs was really informed by photographs of the African American civil rights movement.
If I can clarify something real quick, you had this exhibition with Tom Olin, and it was called Access.
Access is a civil right.
Access is a civil right, and this has been shown a few different times, and now you're combining this exhibition with the voices of Black artists as well. Is that what's okay? Okay. So this exhibition will be made up entirely of work by Black or disabled artists. In the art world, it's predominantly white, and they constantly put, aesthetics above accessibility. And so to make a show featuring only Black or disabled artists, the work is really existing, kind of like what you said, Lisa. The work is really existing in a space that it wasn't really built for it. In a society that values whiteness and health, this show is taking Black and disabled artists and sort of demanding that their voices be heard and their work be seen. How do you guys think that exhibitions like this will aid in creating a more inclusive art world?
I can definitely answer this. I mean, when I was approached by DisArt and Lisa, I was really excited about the exhibition that they spoke of with Tom Olin's work, Access as a Civil Right, because just the word access for me was something I was juggling with in my own personal work, which primarily speaks about my identity as a Black queer woman. And so in talking, we have been talking about themes around obviously protests, thinking about the civil rights movement, the photographs that documented that movement, but then also thinking about the disability rights movement and the photographs that documented that movement, and how those in and of itself, that documentation was an act of protest, and the actual act of viewing that in a space was an act of kind of claiming agency over a movement that spoke to how you, if you fit into that category, existed as a human being in your life. And so when thinking about the way that we are trying to kind of formulate or expand on this exhibition, I mean, just this idea of existence is an act of protest. Thinking about access, the existence and how we kind of exist in a specific space, within a gallery space, within an outdoor space, public space, etc. That is an act of protest because we are protesting for access to be able to occupy that space without feeling any type of pressure to exist in a different way. So access was a huge thing in terms of a theme that we were thinking of, but also this idea of disruption. And I think that came along with thinking about the documentation of protests, the actual act of protest. How do artists now in our time protest? And we thought about this act of protest as a way to disrupt, and disrupting comes in all different forms, outside of just existing, outside of just marching and protesting in the streets. It comes from art making. So the artists of our times right now are responding to these times in ways that involve performance work, in ways that involve community work, workshops, creating artworks that kind of speak a certain language that aids in this idea of disrupting a system that wasn't necessarily built for us. So in the ways of, I mean, in kind of getting back to this question, the ways that we're thinking about this idea of access, this idea of getting to access through disruption, we're not necessarily just thinking about the private gallery space as a space that we occupy and disrupt, but the public space as a space that we occupy and disrupt. And so the artists that will be a part of the show we are hoping will be artists that will respond to the work of Tom Olin, you know, speaking to the disability rights movement, documenting that, and also the work of other photographers and artists who documented civil rights movement, seeing how these two movements kind of collided in creating change and enforcing change, how artists of today can respond to those two movements, create their own disruption in a way that kind of uses multiple mediums. And so we're thinking about artists that are going to be using performance, artists that are going to be using 3D, other 2D works, sculptural works, etc. But also thinking about artists that are going to specifically be thinking about the community and how the community has access to view that work, whether it's inside an actual gallery space that we're disrupting or in the public sphere that we're disrupting. And even also thinking about the digital space. How can we kind of move this project, move this idea, this exhibition outside of just the physical realm, but into a digital space where everyone can have access to be a part of it, and to engage with it, not just engaging with the work of Tom Olin and other artists from our past who have created this work that speaks to a movement, but artists today who are speaking to the movement, and also artists who don't really identify as artists, but they have that potential within themselves to kind of create and visualize their own existence as a form of art, as a form of protest, and as a form of disruption. So I think that's kind of where we're at in terms of thinking about the exhibit and thinking about how these themes disrupt the art world right now and can create this more inclusive space where everyone can feel like they're part of the engagement.
Is there going to be an open call, or is this by invitation only? Like, how are you guys collecting artists for this exhibition?
Yeah, the central component of this exhibition is going to be the art of Tom Olin, and pairing Tom Olin's work with an artist who documented the Black civil rights, and making sure that those two artists and their work are speaking to each other. And then beyond that, we're talking about inviting specific artists to react to, add to, contemporary artists to react to and add to the conversation, so that we have this core exhibition of invited artists. But then we want to make sure that every place where the exhibition is shown engages the local community and the artists there, the activists there, in claiming what their call and response is to the work that's being presented.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the artists that we're looking to be a part of this exhibit, we're looking for artists who are thinking about the responsibility of the artists in engaging the community. We also have spoken in detail about, obviously it's going to be varied based on where the exhibit takes place and what community the exhibit takes place. But there are artists who serve as community gatekeepers in those communities and have access to the community and that trust within the community. And so we're going to be looking for those community gatekeepers in those specific communities, those artists, reach out to them and basically want to kind of work with them on creating outside events, workshops, are just different ways which local artists can become involved in the exhibit and also offer a response to the work that's exhibited, or the work of Tom Olin and the work of photographers who have documented the civil rights movement. We're still kind of expanding on these ideas and growing with this idea, and we are thinking about how we can diversify not just the artist space, but the curatorial space in ways where the artists who are involved, they offer a unique, beautiful perspective in the creation of the art, but how can we invite those artists to also offer a unique creative expression, and how the work is displayed and presented for their actual communities to view. So that's something that we also have been thinking about as well.
Okay, so you guys had sent me like a little bit about your exhibition, and I wanted to highlight this one sentence that you had sent me. You said, "This exhibition does not present an argument of equivalence. The Black political aesthetics differed greatly from that of the disabled community." And I'm just so glad that you guys, mentioned that, because it's so true that, I, as a disabled person, I experience discrimination, but it's not the same discrimination that, my Black peers experience. And so that's something that, I guess, can you speak on your decision to combine both the Black and disabled American experiences into one exhibition?
One of the things that we're trying to explore, a lot of us in this space are exploring this important concept of intersectionality. And it's clear that disabled people, meet their disability at the intersection of other identities, whether that's African American or other race or ethnicity or sexuality or gender. And that has become such a central tenet of our work at DisArt that, and again, in this space of disability art culture, that concept, thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, thanks to some of the stories and some of the upheaval that we're living through right now, thanks to those things, we are finally seeing the power and promise of those intersections. We see that as a sort of shared history or shared legacy. But like you said, Oaklee, the experiences of disabled people and Black people are radically different, and but still speak to each other. So it was important for us to be able to solidify for our audiences that we're not claiming that these communities are merging. There have been beautiful moments of merging in the history of both movements, right? The signing of the 504, for example, after the sit-in, when the Black Panthers came to feed the protesters in wheelchairs and the disabled protesters at the State Building. We want audiences to leave with a more nuanced understanding of both movements, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Chris. You kind of touched on this in your answer just now, but what new understandings do you guys hope that viewers will take away from this exhibition?
It's really important to understand that I guess access is still an issue for a lot of people in the way that they live their lives. I mean, there's always this constant talk about equality, but I think there needs to be a conversation about the access we have to certain resources, and that's the reason, obviously, why equality right now doesn't exist. And so, with this exhibit, I think we talked a lot about, obviously, the fact of educating. Through the photographs of the past, but now also providing a space where the viewer, where the everyday person can come in and understand these experiences and perspectives through experiencing it firsthand through an act of protest that they are actually a part of within the space, are just being able to kind of share that perspective, not obviously live that perspective, but share that perspective in the way that the artist will offer that perspective to the viewer. And so I'm really excited for the way that this exhibit will kind of take on a new role of speaking about access, speaking about this shared fight for access between two communities, and then the way that these two communities have been continuously, from past to present to future, disrupting these systems that have been in place and demanding this visibility, demanding this change, and constantly reclaiming and claiming agency over their own existence through those demands. And so I think in a lot of the work that we've been talking about doing with the exhibit and a lot of the artists that we've been thinking about, we've been constantly thinking about this act of disruption. And I think that's an important act that we're focusing on. And I'm very excited about that.
Thank you so much for joining us here at the True Project and sort of discussing, this upcoming exhibition. I'm so excited to see how this turns out. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Oaklee.
Yeah, thanks, Oaklee.